Can you imagine the shock of waking up from a life-threatening surgery only to lash out at the very person who saved you? That's exactly what happened when Bethany Wallace, a 56-year-old white woman with a heart full of prejudice, was rushed into the emergency room, her life hanging by a thread. The hospital was a whirlwind of chaos, a symphony of beeping monitors and swift-footed nurses darting through the sterile corridors. Lives were on the line, and every second counted. Amid this controlled madness, Dr. Elijah Matthews strode in, his presence a beacon of calm in the storm. His dark eyes scanned the bustling ER with the sharp precision of a seasoned surgeon who'd seen it all: heart attacks, car accidents, you name it. A nurse hurried toward him, her face tight with urgency, her clipboard trembling slightly in her hands. "Dr. Matthews, we've got a crisis. Bethany Wallace, 56, critical condition. She's in surgery but things went south fast. Complications, bad ones," she blurted, her voice laced with worry. Elijah didn't flinch. His nod was quick, his mind already racing. Time was the enemy, and he wasn't about to let it win. He suited up, pulling on his surgical scrubs with practiced ease, the weight of the situation settling like a heavy cloak on his broad shoulders. Bethany Wallace had collapsed at her home, her heart failing her in a moment of terrifying vulnerability. What started as a routine surgery had spiraled into a battle for her life. Now it was up to Elijah to pull her back from the brink. Could he do it? The operating room was a sterile fortress of focus, the air thick with tension. For hours, grueling, endless hours, Elijah's hands moved with unwavering precision, his scalpel a lifeline in the face of death. He blocked out the clamor of the hospital, the hum of machines, even the creeping exhaustion that tugged at his muscles. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his focus never wavered. This was his calling, his purpose. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stepped back, peeling off his blood-streaked gloves with a weary sigh. The clock on the wall mocked him. Hours had slipped away, but Bethany was stable. Alive. Not just alive, but on track for a full recovery thanks to his skill. Elijah's heart swelled with quiet pride, but there was no time for celebration. He left the operating room, not chasing applause or gratitude, but ready for the next patient who needed him. Yet fate had other plans. His pager buzzed urgently, a sharp jolt pulling him back to reality. It was Bethany Wallace. She'd woken up. Elijah hurried to the recovery room, his steps steady but his mind bracing for what awaited. What would he find? As he entered, Bethany's face came into view, pale and pinched with pain, her eyes narrowing like daggers as they locked onto him. Her gaze raked over his dark skin, her lips curling into a sneer. "You!" she spat, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "I want the real doctor, not you. Who do you think you are?" Elijah's heart sank, but he wasn't surprised. Oh, how many times had he faced this? Years of medical practice and personal battles had steeled him against such venom. Racism wasn't new, it just wore different masks, and Bethany's was as blatant as they came. Standing at the foot of her bed, his calm was unshakable, a fortress against her hostility. "I performed your surgery, Miss Wallace," he said, his voice steady, almost soothing. "Your condition was critical, but you pulled through. You're on the road to recovery." But Bethany wasn't having it. Her lips twisted in a cruel sneer. "Pulled through? You call this pulled through?" she barked, jabbing a trembling finger at the bandages on her stomach, her face flushing with rage. "I've never felt worse in my life. What did you do to me, huh? Messed me up, didn't you?" Her words dripped with a poison Elijah knew all too well, each syllable a dagger aimed at his dignity. He glanced at her chart, the numbers confirming what he already knew. The surgery was a triumph. Her vitals were solid, her healing on track. "Your recovery will take time, but you're doing well," he said, his voice even refusing to rise to her bait. "I'll check on you again soon. Don't you dare come near me," she snapped, her voice climbing to a shrill pitch. "I want someone who knows what they're doing. I'm not some charity case for you to experiment on." Elijah paused, the room seeming to shrink under the weight of her words. How could she ignore the truth? He'd faced this hostility before, the kind that saw only his skin, not his skill, not the years of grueling training, not the lives he'd saved. To Bethany, he wasn't a doctor, just a black man, and that was enough to damn him in her eyes. "I assure you, Miss Wallace," he said softly, his voice a quiet anchor in the storm. You're getting the best care possible. If you want a second opinion, I can arrange that. She huffed, turning her face away, her eyes blazing with contempt. Get me someone else, she muttered, her voice low but venomous. I want the hospital director. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. Elijah nodded, his face a mask of calm, though inside a familiar frustration churned. I'll let the director know, he said, turning to leave, her words echoing in his ears like a bitter refrain. As he stepped into the hallway, his footsteps slowed, each one heavy with the weight of the encounter. Why did it always come to this? It wasn't the first time he'd faced a patient like Bethany, and it wouldn't be the last. He'd saved her life, pulled her from the jaws of death, but to her, his skin was all that mattered. Years of medical school, countless sleepless nights, and a career built on saving lives. None of it could shield him from the sting of her prejudice. In the staff room, Elijah sought a moment of solace, pulling off his surgical cap and leaning against the counter, his eyes closing as he tried to find peace. The hospital's hum surrounded him. Beeping monitors, distant voices, the steady pulse of life continuing despite the pain of the moment. It grounded him, reminded him why he was here. But the quiet was short-lived. A nurse appeared at the door, her voice hesitant. Dr. Matthews, Miss Wallace is still asking for you, she said, her eyes wide with concern. Elijah sighed, opening his eyes, the weight settling back on his shoulders. She wants the director, he replied, his voice calm but tinged with exhaustion. I know how this goes. The nurse hesitated, her brow furrowing. I heard her yelling about getting you fired. Should I do something? Elijah shook his head, a faint smile flickering. No, it's okay. Let the director handle it. I've got other patients to check on. Back in the recovery room, Bethany Wallace seethed, her anger a living thing, festering in her heart. She muttered under her breath, her words a toxic brew of resentment. How dare he stand there acting like he belonged? She didn't care that he'd saved her life, that his hands had held her fate and won. All she could see was his face, his skin. A doctor who, in her twisted mind, didn't deserve to be in a place like this. She'd make sure he paid. She'd get him fired, make sure someone like him couldn't touch people like her. As she lay there, stewing in her rage, she was blind to the truth. Her recovery was remarkable. Despite her endless complaints, her body was healing faster than expected, a testament to the skill of the man she despised. But Bethany saw only a target, a scapegoat for her hatred. Later that day, Bethany was moved to a private room, her complaints echoing through the hospital's sterile hallways like a relentless drumbeat. The nurses, ever gentle and professional, bore the brunt of her temper, her every demand met with patience despite her flaring outbursts. She buzzed the call button incessantly, insisting on immediate attention, never satisfied with the clear explanations offered. The room, with its crisp white sheets and softly humming machines, was a stark contrast to her bitterness, a sterile haven that did nothing to soothe her burning resentment. Why wouldn't they listen to her? Why did they keep sending him? The next morning, Elijah entered her room, chart in hand, his heart heavy with the anticipation of another clash. He'd checked her vitals earlier. Everything was on track, her recovery a quiet miracle. But he knew she'd find something to seize, some flaw to exploit. Bethany was already frowning as he stepped inside, her arms crossed tightly, her face pale but no longer etched with physical distress. Her body was healing, but her scowl was a permanent fixture, hard and unyielding. The tension in the room was thick, a palpable force that made the air feel heavy. Good morning, Miss Wallace. I'm here to check on your progress, Elijah said, his voice calm, a steady anchor in the brewing storm. You again, she snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. Didn't I make myself clear? I don't want you anywhere near me. Elijah approached her bedside, his professionalism unshaken, a rock against her waves of anger. I'm your assigned doctor, Miss Wallace. I performed your surgery, and I'm here to make sure you recover properly. Your vitals look great. She sneered, her eyes narrowing to slits. Oh, I bet they do. You probably messed me up so bad even the machines can't tell. I can feel it, hurting worse every second since you touched me. Elijah saw her strategy clear as day. She was fishing, hoping he'd slip, give her something, anything, to use against him. But there was nothing to give. He'd followed every protocol, every step perfect, and Bethany was healthier than she'd admit. "I get that recovery can be tough," he said, his voice even, "but the pain you're feeling is normal after surgery. I can tweak your meds if it's too much, but you're healing well." She scoffed, flinging the covers off her legs with a dramatic flourish. "You think I don't know my own body? I've never felt like this. It's you. You did this to me." Elijah stood firm, his composure a shield. "If you're in pain I can help, but your surgery was a success. You're in good hands." "Good hands?" she shouted, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "I don't believe that for a second. You think I don't see what's happening here? You think I don't know what you're up to?" Her eyes burned with contempt, her words slicing through the air. "You people always think you can get away with anything." Elijah's jaw tightened, the sting of her words cutting deep. How could she say that? He'd heard this poison before, knew responding would only feed her fire, but it hurt all the same. He stayed silent, letting her venom hang in the air. Bethany wasn't done. "I've seen doctors like you. I know the kind of care you give, half-hearted, sloppy, just because you don't like the look of me. I'll have your job, mark my words." "I'm sorry you feel that way," Elijah said, his voice steady, a quiet defiance against her hate. "But I've given you the best care possible. You don't get it, do you?" She spat, her words dripping with venom. "I want the hospital director. Someone who knows what they're doing, not someone like you. You've made me worse, and I won't stand for it." Elijah stood still, absorbing her insults without flinching. Why did she have to make it so personal? He nodded once. "I'll let the director know. In the meantime, let the nurses know if your pain gets worse. I'll check on you later." As he turned to leave, her voice chased him, echoing down the hallway like a curse. "You better believe I'll make sure they hear about this. You won't be working here much longer." The words lingered, a bitter aftertaste as he walked away. His heart heavy but his resolve unbroken. In Dr. Karen Holloway's office, Elijah poured out the ordeal, his voice calm but laced with the weight of the encounter. Dr. Holloway sat behind her desk, her brow furrowed, her fingers steepled as she listened intently. "She's been like this since she woke up," Elijah explained, frustration seeping through. "I've gone over her case a dozen times, everything's perfect. Her vitals are solid, she's recovering faster than expected. But she's convinced something's wrong, and it's all my fault." Dr. Holloway sighed, rubbing her temples, her face etched with concern. "This isn't new, Elijah. We've seen patients like her before, but her accusations? They're baseless. If she keeps this up, it could get messy." Elijah nodded, his jaw tight. "She wants to talk to you. I told her I'd pass it on." "I'll handle it," Dr. Holloway said, leaning back, her voice firm but kind. "But heads up. She's already throwing around threats. Firing you, maybe even a lawsuit." Elijah's heart sank, the weight pressing harder. "I've been here before," he said, his voice weary. "But I just want the truth to stand." "It will," Dr. Holloway assured him, her eyes steady. "I've got the admin side covered. You keep doing what you do best, saving lives. Don't let her get under your skin." "I won't," Elijah replied, but the pressure was undeniable. Could he keep this up? He knew Bethany's accusations, though baseless, could ripple out, threatening his career despite his flawless record. Back in Bethany's room, the air was thick with her restless anger. She fidgeted in her bed, every movement a performance, every groan a calculated cry for attention. Why wouldn't they see she was right? Her eyes darted to the door, waiting for Elijah, ready to unleash another barrage. The nurses moved with quiet efficiency, their patience a stark contrast to her outbursts. But each shadow in the doorway sparked a curl of her lips, a predator awaiting her prey. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. Her mission was clear. Tear him down no matter the cost. Can you feel the tension crackling in the air? Like a storm about to break? In the sterile confines of the hospital, Bethany Wallace lay in her bed, her eyes darting to the door with every creak, every shadow, as if Dr. Elijah Matthews himself were a predator she was poised to strike. Her heart burned with a venomous resolve, ready to unleash another attack the moment he appeared. The nurses, bless their patient souls, moved around her with the quiet efficiency of those who'd seen it all, their faces carefully neutral, knowing better than to tangle with her fiery outbursts. But oh, how Bethany's lips curled in anticipation each time a silhouette darkened the doorway. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. By the third day of her stay, the hospital's atmosphere had shifted, heavy with the weight of her relentless complaints. It was as if her anger had seeped into the very walls, casting a shadow over everyone. Why did she have to make it so unbearable? Nurses traded shifts with reluctant sighs, muttering her name like a curse, while staff passing her room quickened their steps, sensing the toxic mood radiating from within. Dr. Elijah Matthews, though, stood as a rock against the tide of her hostility. His focus was unshakable, his resolve forged in the fires of countless battles with patients like Bethany. Angry, entitled, refusing to see past their prejudices to the skilled doctor who'd saved their lives. But this time the stakes felt higher, didn't they? Each morning he approached her room with a steady heart, the familiar tightness in his chest creeping in like an old enemy. What fresh venom would she hurl today? That morning as he stepped into her room, Bethany's glare hit him like a physical blow, her face flushed with frustration, her deep frown a permanent mask of disdain. She didn't even bother with a hello. "I want someone else," she snapped the moment he crossed the threshold, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Not you. I've had enough of you, you hear me?" Elijah, ever the professional, kept his posture relaxed, his tone as calm as a still lake, though inside, her words stung like 1,000 needles. How could she be so blind? "Miss Wallace, I understand you're upset," he said, his voice steady, "but I'm here to check on your progress. Your recovery's going strong. You should be discharged in just a few days." Bethany scoffed, throwing her hands in the air with a dramatic flourish, as if his words were an insult. "Discharged? You must be joking. I feel worse than when I came in here." She jabbed a shaking finger at him, her eyes blazing with accusation. "And I know it's because of you. You messed me up. My pain's gotten worse, not better." Elijah stayed calm, his hands steady as he opened her chart, the numbers confirming what he already knew. Her recovery was a miracle. Her vitals were rock solid, her surgical site healing beautifully. "Your vitals are stable and your incision is healing well," he said, his voice even refusing to rise to her bait. "The discomfort you're feeling? It's normal after surgery. If the pain's too much, I can adjust your medication." "You can adjust nothing," she snapped, her voice climbing to a shrill crescendo. "I don't trust you. Never did. How do I know you even did the surgery right? You people always think you can get away with anything." The words "you people" landed like a slap, unmistakable in their venom. Elijah paused, letting the poison settle in the air. She wasn't just attacking his skills, she was attacking his very existence as a black doctor. Why did it always come to this? He'd heard it before, oh how many times? But responding with anger would only give her what she craved. "I assure you, Miss Wallace," he said, his voice steady as steel, "your surgery was done by the book and you're recovering well. My priority is your health." Her face reddened with fury, her eyes narrowing to slits. "You're lying," she hissed, her voice dripping with rage. "You've been lying this whole time. I can feel it in my bones. You did something to me, and I'm not letting you get away with it." Elijah met her gaze, unflinching, his calm a fortress against her storm. "If you'd like a second opinion, I can arrange for another doctor to check you, but I've done everything in my power to ensure your recovery." Bethany's lips twisted into a cruel, triumphant smile, as if she'd found her weapon at last. "Oh, I'll get a second opinion, all right," she sneered. "I'll get one when I sue this hospital for everything it's worth." The threat hung in the air, her eyes flashing with a newfound power, a predator sensing blood. Elijah didn't respond right away, the weight of her words sinking in. Could she really do this? He stayed calm, his voice a quiet anchor. "I'll be back later to check on you," he said, turning to leave, his steps measured despite the storm raging inside. "Oh, you'll be back, all right," she called after him, her voice echoing down the hallway like a curse. "But it won't be to check on me, it'll be to pack your things because you'll be out of a job." The words chased him, a bitter refrain, as he made his way to Dr. Karen Holloway's office, his heart heavy but his resolve unbroken. Inside, he poured out the ordeal, his voice calm but tinged with the exhaustion of a man who'd fought this battle too many times. Dr. Holloway sat behind her desk, her brow furrowed, her fingers tapping nervously as she listened. She's been like this since day one, Elijah said, frustration seeping through. I've gone over her case 100 times, everything's perfect. Her vitals are great, she's healing faster than most, but she's convinced I've done something wrong, and it's all because of me. Dr. Holloway sighed, rubbing her temples, her face etched with worry. She's escalating, Elijah. I've talked to legal, and while there's no case here, she could stir up a lot of trouble. Even baseless lawsuits can hurt the hospital's reputation. Elijah nodded, his jaw tight, the weight pressing harder on his shoulders. Could this really spiral out of control? I know this is tough, Dr. Holloway continued, her tone softening, but we've got your back. Your work speaks for itself. Her claims don't hold water. I appreciate that, Elijah replied, his voice firm but weary, but I can't lie, it's weighing on me. It's not just about losing my job. It's how easy it is for someone like her to try to tear everything down, just because of how I look. Dr. Holloway's eyes softened, a sigh escaping her lips. I know, Elijah. It's infuriating and it's so unfair, but we'll handle this. She'll be discharged soon and maybe, hopefully, this will all blow over. Elijah nodded, but the tightness in his chest didn't ease. Would it ever be over? He knew how these things went, baseless or not. Her accusations could ripple out, threatening everything he'd built. I'll keep doing my rounds, he said, standing up, his voice steady despite the storm inside. Keep me posted if anything changes. Dr. Holloway watched him leave, her expression tight with concern, her heart aching for the man who faced such hatred for doing his job. That evening, Elijah returned to Bethany's room, the same grueling routine. Check her vitals, ensure her healing, and brace for the onslaught. She was ready the moment he walked in, clutching her side with a dramatic wince, her face contorting in mock agony. Ow! She cried, as if his mere presence caused her pain. What did you do to me? Elijah frowned, stepping closer to inspect her incision. It was clean, healing perfectly, a testament to his skill. But Bethany played her part, gasping and gripping her side as if in unbearable torment. Why did she have to make it so hard? I'm in agony, she yelled, her voice loud enough to draw nurses' glances from the hallway. You did this. You've made me worse. Elijah stayed calm, refusing to be drawn into her theatrics. Miss Wallace, your incision is healing fine. I can adjust your meds for the pain, but this is normal recovery, he said, his voice steady. No, it's not, she shouted, her eyes blazing. You botched this. You're trying to get rid of me, aren't you? I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole hospital. Nurses exchanged uneasy looks, but Elijah kept his focus, his calm a shield against her fury. I'll have someone check in later. Please rest, he said, turning to leave, her venomous words chasing him. You won't get away with this, Dr. Matthews. I'll make sure you're out of here. You'll never work again. By the time Elijah reached the nurse's station, the tension in his shoulders was a living thing, an exhaustion born not of long hours but of her relentless accusations. Her voice echoed in his mind, a cruel loop of threats that wouldn't quit. Greg Sanders, the hospital's security chief, approached, his face etched with concern. Heard she's at it again, huh? He said, his voice gruff but kind. Elijah nodded, rubbing his temple, a faint headache blooming. She's not letting up. Threatening a lawsuit now. Greg shook his head, crossing his arms, his jaw tight. People like her, they think they can bully their way through life. Don't let her get to you, Doc. You've done nothing wrong. I know, Elijah replied, but the tightness in his chest didn't budge. Could he keep this up? I just want this to end without it exploding. Greg clapped a hand on his shoulder, his grip firm. You've got the hospital behind you. If she tries anything, we'll handle it. Elijah managed a faint smile, but as he walked away, the feeling lingered. This was far from over. Bethany wasn't just an angry patient. She was on a mission to destroy him, not for any mistake but for who he was. How could hate run so deep? 2 more days dragged by, each sunrise sharpening Bethany's hostility like a blade. She complained to anyone who'd listen, nurses, staff, even other patients passing by. Her room a battleground of accusations and threats. Each encounter was a performance, her feigned pain and outrage draining everyone around her. Elijah kept his composure, But oh, how her constant barrage wore him down. Her discharge day finally arrived, a glimmer of hope. Elijah reviewed her chart one last time, confirming everything was perfect. Her incision healed beautifully, her vitals were stable, her recovery steady. But he knew the battle wasn't over. Not yet. He entered her room that morning, bracing for the inevitable clash. Bethany sat up in bed, arms crossed, her scowl a dark cloud, looking not like a woman ready to leave but a warrior poised for another fight. "You're being discharged today," Elijah said calmly, meeting her fiery gaze. "Your recovery's gone great, you're fit to leave." She glared, her lips curling into a sneer. "Discharged? You think I'm just walking out like this? I'm not going anywhere until I get justice." Elijah raised an eyebrow, his composure unshaken. "Miss Wallace, you've recovered from your surgery. The hospital's given you top-notch care. It's time to continue healing at home." She shook her head, her face flushing with rage. "I don't trust you. I don't trust any of you. You've been trying to get rid of me. But I'm not leaving until I talk to someone who knows what they're doing." Elijah's voice stayed steady, a calm anchor. "The hospital director knows your concerns. You've spoken with her, and she backs the treatment plan. You're cleared to go. I don't care what she says." Bethany's voice rose, her frustration boiling over. "You people are all in this together. I'm not leaving until I'm sure you haven't done something to me I don't know about." Elijah paused, choosing his words carefully. Could she push this any further? "Miss Wallace, if you refuse to leave, we'll have to involve security. You've been discharged. Staying here only takes space from other patients." Her eyes flashed with fury. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. Elijah didn't flinch. "Security will escort you if needed. It's your choice." The room fell silent, Bethany's chest heaving as she glared, calculating her next move. Had she met her match? Suddenly she leaned forward, clutching her side with a dramatic cry. "Ow, ow! See what you've done? I can't move without collapsing, and you want to throw me out like trash." Elijah ignored her theatrics, turning to the nurse at the door. "Please call security," he said, his voice calm but firm. Minutes later, Greg Sanders appeared, his tall frame filling the doorway, his eyes locking onto Bethany's performance. "Miss Wallace," he said, his voice polite but unyielding, "you've been discharged. Time to leave." She glared up at him, her face a mix of anger and defiance. "I'm not going anywhere. I have a right to stay until I'm sure I'm okay." Greg sighed, stepping inside. "Ma'am, we've followed every procedure. Your doctor's cleared you. If you don't leave, we'll escort you out." Bethany's expression hardened. "Try it. I'll sue this place into the ground. You won't get rid of me that easy." Greg stayed calm, unmoved. "That's your call, but you need to leave now. Let's not make this harder." She sat back, arms crossed, defiant to the end. "I'm not moving." Greg glanced at Elijah, who nodded slightly. This wasn't ending peacefully. Greg signaled another officer, and within minutes, Bethany's belongings were gathered, and she was placed in a wheelchair, her furious protests echoing through the halls as Greg wheeled her out. "You think this is over?" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Elijah, who stood at the nurse's station watching silently. "I'll be back. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. I'll ruin you." Elijah kept his face neutral, but inside, her words were a heavy weight, personal and piercing. Why did it have to be so vicious? This wasn't his first patient to threaten him, but her anger cut deeper, fueled by prejudice. As security escorted her out, the ward's air lightened, the tension that had gripped the staff for days beginning to fade. Nurses exchanged relieved glances, their shoulders easing as Bethany's voice finally vanished, leaving a fragile peace in its wake. Can you imagine carrying the weight of someone's hatred, even after saving their life? Later that day, Dr. Elijah Matthews sat in his cluttered office, the soft hum of the hospital fading into the background as he pored over patient files, his eyes weary but focused. The weight of the day's battles pressed on him, a heavy cloak he couldn't shake. A gentle knock broke his concentration, and Dr. Karen Holloway stepped in, her face etched with exhaustion, her usually bright eyes dimmed by worry. "Elijah, I heard what happened," she said, sinking into the chair across from him, her voice heavy with concern. "Greg filled me in on everything. Elijah nodded, his jaw tight, the memory of Bethany Wallace's venomous outburst still fresh. She wasn't going to leave on her own, Karen. Not a chance. Dr. Holloway sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair, her fingers trembling slightly. It's not over, though. Our legal team just called. Miss Wallace is threatening to storm back tomorrow and sue the hospital. She's not letting this go, Elijah. Elijah leaned back in his chair, the news settling over him like a dark cloud. Could this really keep escalating? I figured as much, he said, his voice steady but laced with fatigue, the kind that seeped into your bones after too many battles. Dear. Holloway studied him, her gaze softening, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. You've handled this with more patience than anyone could, Elijah. I know this isn't easy, how could it be? Elijah's lips curved into a faint, tired smile. I'm used to it, he said, his voice calm but heavy with the weight of countless similar encounters. It's just exhausting, you know? She nodded, her eyes brimming with understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the unfair burden he carried. We're with you, Elijah. The hospital's got your back, no matter what she tries to pull. Thank you, he said quietly, his voice soft but sincere, though the tightness in his chest refused to ease. Would this ever end? He knew this wasn't the end. Bethany had made it crystal clear she was far from done, and tomorrow, another fight loomed on the horizon, as inevitable as the sunrise. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the hospital in hues of gold and shadow, Elijah found a moment of solace in the staff room, the stillness a balm for his frayed nerves. He sat alone, the quiet wrapping around him like a fragile cocoon. But oh, how the weight of Bethany's threats lingered. Her constant barrage of accusations, the sharp sting of her racial hostility, it had taken a toll, hadn't it? He'd done his job and done it well, saving her life with skill honed over years of sacrifice. The truth was on his side, unshakable. But why didn't that make it easier? The scars of her words cut deep, a reminder of the battles he fought not just as a doctor, but as a black man in a world that too often refused to see his worth. The next morning, the hospital was eerily quiet, a deceptive calm that Elijah knew was only temporary. Could peace ever last with Bethany's shadow looming? He braced himself for the inevitable clash, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this time, the stakes were higher. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was out for blood, her sights set on destruction. By mid-morning, the hospital door swung open with a dramatic flourish, and there she was, Bethany Wallace, her face twisted in the same fury that had defined her stay, marching into the lobby like a warrior bent on vengeance. Had she no shame? Flanked by a younger man, her lawyer no doubt with his slick suit and stern frown, she stormed past the receptionist, her steps purposeful, heading straight for Dr. Holloway's office. Elijah watched from a distance, his pulse quickening as the lobby's tension thickened. A storm brewing in the air. The receptionist, her hands trembling, fumbled for the phone to call security, and within minutes Greg Sanders appeared, his broad frame moving swiftly toward Bethany and her lawyer. Elijah stood back, his eyes sharp, waiting for the moment he'd be pulled into the fray again. Why did it always come to this? In Dr. Holloway's office, the atmosphere was electric, charged with a tension that seemed to pulse in the walls. Bethany sat in a chair across from Dr. Holloway's desk, her lawyer standing beside her, arms crossed, his presence a silent threat. Dr. Holloway remained calm, her expression stern but composed, a rock in the face of Bethany's storm. Miss Wallace, she began, her voice measured. I understand you're back to discuss your concerns, but let me be clear. Dr. Matthews gave you the best care possible. Your surgery was a success, and you were discharged in stable condition. Bethany cut her off, her voice shrill, piercing the air like a siren. Best care possible? He nearly killed me. I've been in pain every second since I left, and I know it's because of him. Her lawyer, a man in his mid-30s with a practiced scowl, leaned in, his tone cold. Miss Wallace is filing a lawsuit against Dr. Matthews and this hospital for medical negligence. We believe he failed in his duties, causing her prolonged suffering. Dr. Holloway didn't flinch, her resolve unshaken. We've reviewed Dr. Matthews' work thoroughly, and there's no evidence to support that claim. His treatment met the highest medical standards, and Miss Wallace's recovery was exactly as expected. Bethany slammed her hand on the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. You're all protecting him. You think I don't see what's going on? You're covering for him to avoid a scandal. Well, I'll make sure the world knows what happened. Elijah stood outside, near the nurse's station, his heart pounding as the muffled voices from the office reached him. How could she ignore the truth? He'd faced this kind of confrontation before, but the weight was always the same: the accusations, the blatant disregard for facts, the prejudice that saw only his skin. It was a burden he hadn't chosen but carried nonetheless. After what felt like an eternity, the office door swung open, and Bethany emerged, her face flushed with rage, her eyes burning with a fire that hadn't dimmed. Her lawyer trailed behind, scribbling furiously on a notepad, his face a mask of determination. Dr. Holloway followed, her expression unchanged, a pillar of strength. "Elijah!" she called, motioning him over, her voice steady but urgent. He walked toward them, his steps measured, his face unreadable, though inside the familiar frustration simmered. Could he face her again? Bethany's eyes locked onto him, venomous as he approached, her gaze a weapon aimed to wound. "Miss Wallace," Dr. Holloway continued, "this is Dr. Matthews. He's ready to explain any part of your procedure or recovery if you have concerns." Elijah faced Bethany, his voice calm, a quiet defiance against her hate. "If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them," he said. "But as I've said, your recovery was typical for this surgery. No complications. You were discharged once you were stable." Bethany sneered, her lawyer stepping in before she could speak, his voice sharp. "We'll take this to court, Dr. Matthews. Prepare yourself. You can't hide behind hospital rules when this goes public." Elijah kept his tone even, though the frustration burned inside. How could they twist the truth like this? "There's nothing to hide," he said firmly. "I stand by the care I provided. You were treated with the highest standards." Bethany's face reddened, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You'll regret this. You people always think you can get away with anything, but not this time. I'll ruin you." Elijah's gaze didn't waver, his calm a shield against her fury. "I did my job and I'll keep doing it. The facts will speak for themselves." The lawyer turned to Dr. Holloway, his tone clipped. "We'll be in touch with your legal team." With that, Bethany and her lawyer stormed out, their footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway, a fading drumbeat of rage. For a moment the tension lingered, thick between Dr. Holloway and Elijah. "She's not letting this go," Holloway said softly, her eyes tracking their departure. "But we'll handle it, Elijah. You did everything right." Elijah nodded, but the tightness in his chest remained, her words a wound that refused to heal. Would this ever truly end? Later that day, Elijah sat alone in his office, staring at patient files but seeing only the confrontation, Bethany's accusations a heavy weight on his heart. A knock broke his reverie and Greg Sanders stepped in, his calm presence a comfort. "You okay, Doc?" Greg asked, leaning against the doorframe, his eyes kind. Elijah nodded slowly, his voice weary. "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired of this." Greg shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I get it. People like her always looking for someone to blame no matter the truth. They see what they want to see." Elijah leaned back, exhaling, the weight pressing harder. "I just want it over, Greg." Greg nodded, his voice steady. "It'll be soon enough. She'll see her case is weak. Until then we weather the storm." Elijah managed a faint smile. "Thanks, Greg." Greg tipped his head and left, leaving Elijah with his thoughts. The hospital's hum a quiet backdrop. The day dragged on, the shadow of Bethany's threat looming large. Nurses whispered about the clash, their voices hushed to spare Elijah's ears. But he felt the tension, an invisible burden trailing him through every hallway. As evening fell, the hospital quieted, and Elijah sat in the break room, staring out at the fading sunset, its golden hues a fleeting comfort. The day's weight pressed down, but he clung to the truth. He'd done his best. Whatever Bethany tried, the facts would stand. But oh, how hard it was to carry that knowledge when her rage still burned. As the last light faded, Elijah knew this wasn't over. She'd come back, and he'd be ready, standing tall against her fury. The next morning, the hospital's quiet was deceptive. A calm before the storm Elijah knew was coming. Could he brace for another round? Bethany's relentless pursuit to ruin him had solidified into a lawsuit. The news from Dr. Holloway a few days ago hitting like a punch he couldn't dodge. As he moved through his rounds, the tension grew, a palpable force felt by nurses, doctors, even patients, the weight of an impending battle. Colleagues offered reassuring smiles, their support unspoken but clear. Yet the burden was his alone. A week later, the legal fight took shape. The hospital's team scrambling to gather evidence against Bethany's claims of malpractice and racial bias. Elijah knew he was blameless, but the fear of a tarnished reputation gnawed at him. Then one morning, Greg approached at the nurse's station, his face serious. "She's back," he said, voice low. "Miss Wallace here to see you." Elijah's chest tightened, the confrontation looming larger. Why was she back after filing the suit? "She wants to talk to me personally," Greg added. Elijah took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I'll handle it." He stepped into the small conference room, where Bethany sat with her lawyer, her face hard, bitterness etched in every line. She stared at him as if he were the root of all her pain. Her lawyer's stiff posture a silent challenge. Could Elijah face her hatred one more time? The air in the small conference room was thick with tension, a storm ready to erupt. "You!" Bethany Wallace spat the moment Dr. Elijah Matthews stepped inside, her voice slicing through the silence like a blade, her eyes blazing with a hatred so raw it seemed to pulse in the room. "You think you can just waltz in here and act like everything's fine after what you did to me?" Elijah felt the weight of her venom, a crushing force that threatened to suffocate. But this time, this time, he wasn't going to let it slide. No more silence, no more taking the high road without a fight. His heart pounded, but his resolve was ironclad. "I've given you the best care I could," he said, his voice calm but firm, a steady anchor in the chaos of her rage. "I saved your life, Miss Wallace. I treated you with the same professionalism I give every patient, and yet, from the moment you opened your eyes, you've accused me of lies. And for what? Because you can't stomach that someone like me, someone with my skin, helped you." Bethany leaned forward, her eyes narrowing to slits, her face a mask of fury. "You think this is about race?" she hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. Elijah met her gaze, unflinching, his eyes burning with a truth he'd held back too long. Could she deny it? "I know it is," he said, his voice steady but charged with conviction. "You've treated me with nothing but contempt since the second you saw me. Not because I made a mistake, but because of what I look like. How dare you?" Her lawyer, a stiff man in a crisp suit, shifted uncomfortably, his papers rustling, but Elijah wasn't done, not by a long shot. "I've worked my entire life to stand where I am," he continued, his voice growing more intense, a fire kindled but never out of control. "I've faced people like you before, people who see only my skin color and nothing else. But you, Miss Wallace, you've crossed a line. You've tried to destroy my career, my reputation, just because you can't accept that I'm the one who pulled you back from death's door." Bethany's face flushed a deep crimson, her anger a living thing, but for once she didn't interrupt. Was she stunned into silence? "You want to believe I treated you poorly because it fits your twisted idea of who I am," Elijah said, his voice steady, each word a hammer striking truth. "But the truth is I gave you the same care, the same respect I give every patient. Your recovery went well because I did my job. You're alive today because I did my job." The room fell silent, the air heavy with the weight of his words. Bethany's lawyer cleared his throat, his cautious voice cutting through the tension. "Dr. Matthews," he began, his tone wary, "we'll be proceeding with the case, but you should." Elijah cut him off, his eyes locked on Bethany, unwavering. "Proceed," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "Because when this goes to court, the truth will shine through. I did everything I could for you, Miss Wallace, and your claims? They won't hold up. They're built on hate, not facts." Bethany's expression remained cold, but her silence spoke volumes. Had he finally struck a chord? Her lawyer nodded curtly, gathering his papers with a haste that betrayed his unease, clearly eager to escape the charged atmosphere. "We'll see you in court," he said, ushering Bethany out, her final venomous glance at Elijah a dagger aimed to wound as she vanished through the door. Could she really believe she'd win? The weeks leading up to the court date stretched on, long and grueling, each day a test of endurance. The hospital's legal team worked tirelessly, their desks buried under stacks of records, their voices a constant hum as they interviewed witnesses and built a fortress of evidence. Elijah pressed on with his work, saving lives with the same skill that had defined his career. But oh, how the lawsuit's shadow clung to him. Could he ever escape it? The weight of Bethany's accusations never fully left his mind, a nagging ache that followed him through every surgery, every patient chart, every quiet moment. The day of the hearing dawned with a sense of finality, a reckoning long overdue. Elijah sat quietly in the courtroom, flanked by Dr. Karen Holloway and the hospital's attorneys, his posture calm but his heart racing. Across from him Bethany sat, her expression hardened with a resolve that hadn't softened, her anger a fire that refused to die. Her lawyer rose, presenting her case with a litany of claims: negligence, incompetence, even racial discrimination. How could she twist the truth so brazenly? But as the hospital's defense team took the floor, the cracks in her accusations began to show, like fault lines in a crumbling wall. One by one, they dismantled her claims, presenting a mountain of evidence. Elijah's flawless record, the meticulous care he'd provided, the undeniable success of Bethany's surgery. Medical experts took the stand, their voices steady as they testified to Elijah's professionalism. While patient records laid bare the truth, her recovery had been textbook perfect. The courtroom grew hushed, the weight of reality impossible to ignore. Bethany shifted in her seat, her confidence faltering, her hands fidgeting nervously. Was she finally seeing the futility of her fight? The judge listened intently, his face impassive, but as the hospital's case unfolded, the truth shone brighter than ever. Could anyone deny it? In the end, the verdict came clear and resounding. The case was dismissed. Bethany's claims of negligence and racial discrimination were baseless, her lawsuit thrown out with the force of justice. Elijah sat still, the words washing over him like a cleansing tide. Relief flooded his heart, but oh, how it mingled with a lingering weariness. He'd known the truth would prevail, but at what cost? The fight had drained him, left scars that no victory could erase. That evening, back at the hospital, Elijah stood in his office, staring out at the city's fading light, the skyline a tapestry of twinkling stars against the dusk. The weight of the day clung to him, but a gentle knock broke his reverie. Dr. Holloway stepped inside, her face soft with quiet satisfaction. "It's over, Elijah," she said, her voice a soothing balm. The judge tossed the case. "You're in the clear." Elijah nodded, the relief settling deeper, a warmth spreading through his chest. "I knew we'd win, but God, I didn't expect it to be this draining." Dr. Holloway's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "You handled it with grace, Elijah. More than anyone could have asked. We're so proud of you." "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet but brimming with gratitude. "The hospitals support a lifeline in the storm. I couldn't have done it without you all." Dr. Holloway stepped closer, her eyes shining with sincerity, a beacon of truth. "You belong here, Elijah. Don't ever let someone like her make you doubt that." He nodded, a small smile breaking through, though the exhaustion lingered. "I won't," he said softly. "It's just tiring, you know? Always having to prove myself, over and over." "I know," she said, her voice gentle, a whisper of understanding. "But you've proven yourself, Elijah, to everyone." With that, she left, the soft click of the door echoing in the quiet office, leaving him alone with his thoughts. As night fell, Elijah took one last look at the city, its lights a reminder of a world that kept turning despite the battles within. The battle was won, the truth had triumphed, but oh, how the scars of Bethany's hatred lingered. They were a reminder of the challenges he faced as a black doctor in a world that wasn't always just. But for now he could breathe easier. The storm passed, his strength forged anew. He stood taller, ready for whatever came next. Yet the fight wasn't truly over, was it? Elijah had hoped the lawsuit's end would bring a clean slate, a final release from the stress and hostility that had haunted him for weeks. In some ways it had. Victory was sweet. But as days passed, he realized it wasn't a magic eraser, wiping away the pain. The wounds, invisible but deep, hadn't fully healed, had they? A few days later, Elijah slipped back into the hospital's familiar rhythm, moving through rounds, greeting patients with his warm smile, consulting colleagues with his sharp mind. But beneath it all, a subtle tension lingered, an unspoken echo of the battle. Could he ever shake it? One afternoon, as he reviewed a patient's chart at the nurse's station, Greg Sanders approached, his thoughtful gaze cutting through the bustle. You know, Greg said, leaning against the counter, his voice low. I've been thinking about how this whole mess went down. Elijah glanced up, curious, a flicker of interest in his tired eyes. What do you mean, Greg? Greg crossed his arms, his expression serious but warm, a friend in the fray. That lawsuit, the way Miss Wallace came at you, it wasn't just about the surgery, was it? We both know it ran deeper. People like her, they can't handle someone like you having power over them. That's why she tried to tear you down. Elijah nodded, the truth stinging like an old wound reopened. It's not the first time, he said quietly, his voice heavy. But it's exhausting. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. Greg's gaze held steady, a spark of admiration in his eyes. It was enough, Elijah. More than enough. You beat her. You didn't let her win, and that's huge. Elijah managed a faint smile, Greg's words a small light in the darkness. I know, but I thought when it was over it'd feel final, you know? Like a miracle. Instead, I'm still carrying it. Greg nodded, his voice gentle. That's normal, Doc. Battles like that leave scars, but you're still here. That means something. Elijah sighed, glancing at the chart, its pages blurring under his gaze. I just don't know how to let it go. Greg's eyes softened, thoughtful. Maybe you don't have to let it go. Maybe it's not about shaking it off. Maybe it's about carrying it, letting it make you stronger. Elijah looked at him, the words sinking in. Could it be that simple? Maybe, he said softly. Maybe you're right. That evening after rounds, the hospital quieted, and Elijah found himself in the break room, staring out at the darkening sky, city lights twinkling like distant promises. The hospital's hum was a steady heartbeat, grounding him. He'd always prided himself on pushing forward, through medical school's grueling nights, residency's endless shifts, the subtle and overt racism he'd faced. This battle with Bethany should have been just another hurdle, right? But it cut deeper, didn't it? As he sat, lost in thought, Dr. Holloway entered, a coffee cup in hand, her smile warm but knowing. Mind if I join you? She asked, her voice a gentle intrusion. Elijah nodded, gesturing to the seat across. Please. Dr. Holloway sat, sipping her coffee, the silence between them comfortable. How are you holding up, Elijah? Really? She asked, her eyes searching. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, the weight of it all spilling out. Honestly, I'm still sorting it out. I thought the case ending would lift this burden, and in a way it has. But part of it's still here, you know? She nodded, her expression soft, understanding. That makes sense. What she put you through wasn't just a lawsuit. It was personal. It attacked your identity, your worth, your place here. Elijah met her gaze, grateful for her insight. Exactly. It wasn't just about being a doctor. It was about being a black man in her world. Dr. Holloway set her coffee down, her voice firm yet kind. And yet, you showed everyone you belong. You're not here just because of your skills. You're one of the best. The hospital knows it, the court knows it, and now she does too. Elijah smiled, though his eyes held a quiet ache. I know, but it's tough, feeling like I'll always have to prove myself. Like there's always someone waiting to tear me down. She reached across, her hand gentle on his. You've proven yourself, Elijah, time and again. Yes, there'll be more like her, but they can't take away what you've earned. You're here because you're meant to be. Elijah nodded, gratitude warming his heart. Thank you, he said, his voice soft but strong. You don't have to do this alone, she said, her smile a beacon. We're with you always. As she left, Elijah lingered. The city lights a reminder of a world that kept moving. The battle was won, but the scars remained, a testament to his resilience as a black doctor in an unfair world. But he could breathe easier now, stronger, ready for whatever lay ahead, carrying his scars as badges of strength. Oh, how my heart aches for Dr. Elijah Matthews, a man whose skill and compassion shine so brightly, yet face such cruel shadows. This story is a raw, emotional testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of prejudice. Elijah's unwavering professionalism, despite Bethany Wallace's venomous hatred, moves me deeply. It's a powerful reminder of the strength it takes to stand tall when the world tries to tear you down. Why must someone so dedicated endure such injustice? His quiet courage, carrying the scars of racism while saving lives, is nothing short of heroic. The courtroom victory is a bittersweet triumph, a beacon of hope that truth can prevail, but the lingering wounds speak to a harsh reality. The fight against bias is far from over. Dr. Holloway and Greg's support warm my heart, showing that solidarity can light the darkest paths. This narrative stirs both anger and admiration. Anger at the persistence of hate, admiration for Elijah's grace under fire. It's a call to reflect. How can we build a world where worth isn't judged by skin? Elijah's story is a poignant, valuable lesson in perseverance and dignity, inspiring us all to rise above.